Honestly, if you guys knew what my office space looked like, it's a moving blanket. I basically make a box for it behind me, and sometimes it falls over onto the floor, scaring me to death. Oh yeah, crack a cold one with the boys. Thank you, TK, for providing a code for the video today. Please don't send investigators to my house and do all sorts of intimidation stuff that you guys moving on. Well, when it rains, it pours. Wait, I think I started my last video that way. When it deluges harder. Look, the last week's been ridiculous. From doing a bunch of work at a place where there was no internet, so I couldn't touch Borderlands 3 over the weekend, to having my windshield cracked, jury duty, getting my back thrown out, it added all up. And so for that, I am sorry for the delay. But the season of FPS must continue. And here it is. Yeah, Borderlands 3, it is really stinking good. It is a fun experience. It does not come without its fair share of caveats. There are some great things about it, and it does push forward in every single way from Borderlands 2. I think it really improves in almost every single aspect, even if they are subtle improvements and not giant evolutions. However, there are some big cons. There's not a lot of mechanics, the mission design feels fairly static, the UI hasn't aged super well, and the narrative for me fell kind of flat. All that aside though, it still remains a really awesome game that is blighted, there's your Destiny reference right there, by a bunch of stuff that are outside of the actual game, from stupid Epic Store drama to optimization issues to a bad review process. The way they handed out the review codes was not optimal. So before we dive into this, I do want to say that I think comparing Destiny to Borderlands is not entirely fair. To me, that is like comparing Diablo to World of Warcraft, something that is a very different backbone at its heart, okay? Diablo is not an MMO light and vice versa, okay? So yes, there are places where Destiny and Borderlands overlaps, but I think when you go into Borderlands, you are looking for a different type of experience. So I'm not going to hamstring the two and do the one-to-one comparisons that I've seen a lot of other video reviewers doing, okay? Borderlands 3 is really stinking addictive, and I say that from the perspective of somebody who was not planning on picking up Borderlands 3 until it landed on a different storefront in like a year's time. Why? Because Borderlands is a game that I want to play with my friends, and most of my friends are sidelining Borderlands 3 until it arrives on a different storefront, which we will talk about later. With all that said, I have ended up putting way more time into this game than I expected, and when I say it's addictive, it truly has mastered gunplay to a big level in comparison to Borderlands 2. It's much better than Borderlands 2 in the way that the weapons mechanically feel. Seriously, it has improved dramatically over Borderlands 2. The actual feel of firing the weapons is substantially better, and the weapons feel very different. Plenty of diversity between weapon handling and personalities, and that is such a big deal because in Borderlands 2, for the most part, during the leveling experience, I didn't find myself getting that into the loot grind. It just was another thing, whatever's gonna get me to the next level the fastest. Whereas in Borderlands 3, from almost the very beginning, you are tasked with picking guns that have feelings and different play styles that you enjoy. It's not just about one-upping the previous stats on your last weapon, it's about what is useful in this situation and should I use the weapon that explodes when I reload it. When Borderlands 3 is running properly, it's pretty darn hard to put down. And frankly, the amount of quality of life improvements between this and Borderlands 2 makes it tough for me to probably ever want to go back and play Borderlands 2. One of the biggest standouts here is the instanced loot. I love that change of pace, so you can pretty much play with anybody wherever. Have you ever had the experience where, all right guys, we're all gonna start up our playthrough and Johnny decides to grind 10 hours while you're at work, you get back the next day, and suddenly you can no longer play together anymore and it just disrupts the experience. I'm so happy that there's the option to now not worry about that. If you want the classic experience, it is absolutely there for you. Borderlands 3 is kind of weird in the sense that just like Gears 5, it's not a giant step forward in terms of making huge evolutions in the gameplay design. Make no mistake, it is a Borderlands game at its heart. It doesn't radically transform the formula, nor does it take any really risky steps. It delivers more of what players loved about the previous games with plenty of quality of life improvements. And just as I said with Gears 5, for some players that's going to be awesome, and for others it maybe is not enough. For me, I'm happy. I think Borderlands as a formula you don't need to mess with very much. If you like that core gameplay loop, you don't need to add or radically transform that gameplay loop. And apparently numbers are saying similarly, as this is what, 2K's fastest selling game, and it's already outsold Borderlands 2, which I find hard to believe because that thing is always like $5 on the Steam store, man. Let's talk about some of the cons though. What does make this formula feel a little bit dated, and I told you this is the one caveat, the one place I will compare this game to Destiny, is the lack of mechanics. And this comes into play in mission design. Yes, there are boss fights in Borderlands 3, some of which are fun, some of which are not super fun. If you look over at Destiny and all the years that it has been pushing forward mechanical challenge in FPS games, Borderlands didn't really pick up on any of these things. It is still pretty much shoot bad guy or here's weak spot, and you don't have any of those spinning the plates moments that you get in Destiny. I'm not saying I want raids in Borderlands 3 that require you to stand on the door while lighting the fire and doing a backflip and singing the song of Poopa, because let's face it, Destiny's kind of gotten ridiculous with mechanics in the last few years. But Borderlands 3 would have benefited from looking at some of its counterparts in the FPS space and pulling some of those mechanical evolutions into its mission design. Everything is your standard fetch and kill quest here, and rarely ever do you get epic moments within the missions. I'm not saying the environments aren't beautiful, they are, and I love the new locations, and getting to travel on the ship adds so much to this journey. But doggone it, missions get stale, you guys, and it's only added upon by the writing. Borderlands writing has always been sort of hit or miss. Yes, it has that over-the-top attitude that anytime I see a trailer for it, I love it, and you bring Claptrap into a situation, I'm gonna smile. However, I don't know if it's me getting older or if the writing just didn't stick the landing all the time, but I found myself tuning out a lot of the dialogue in this game. Some moments can definitely be funny, however, perhaps this part of the Borderlands formula could use a little bit of evolution. Comedy is always subjective though, but I did want to mention, I kind of found myself turning the game volume down and having Netflix running on a side screen. Hey, don't judge, you know there are those types of looter games where you're doing things in the background, and Borderlands is one of those types of games. A couple of other cons here too is that the UI has not aged well. It's still fairly clunky and definitely hasn't learned from counterparts within the industry. And now the big stuff, the unfortunate things that take away from the game when they really shouldn't. The Epic Store drama that I'm not going to go into, all right? I'm not a fan of the Epic Store, not for the length of look, you got to do a lot of research, and I don't know enough about the terms of use and the user agreements and the deals that are being struck to talk about in an educated, concise way the real pros and cons of the Epic Store. I just know that using that storefront is rather frustrating. I don't like their launcher very much. Added on top of this, there are a ton of optimization problems with Borderlands 3. Even on powerful PCs, there are areas where things can chug down. If you haven't watched the Digital Foundry breakdown on the performance of Borderlands 3 across the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro, it is woefully lacking in my opinion. Having battles that are occurring at really low chunky frame rates is not acceptable in my opinion in an FPS game. I would rather always take stable FPS versus high resolution any day of the week, especially when it comes to a first-person shooter. Add on top of this sketchiness around the review code process, and of course the ever ongoing Randy Pitchford drama, and you have a lot of things outside of the game that take away from what is an awesome title that any looter shooter fan should be excited for. So my final thought to you, it's a really good game, but honestly, if you were to wait a year or wait 6 months for optimization patches to come down the pipeline, you're totally good. Borderlands 3 is not a shared world experience like Destiny is. You're not missing out on any in-game giant events. You're not missing out on the opening of the gates of Ankh-Raj. In 6 months, Borderlands 3 is going to be relatively the same game with more optimization and maybe some more quality of life features included. And that's why I could very safely encourage players that if this looks awesome and you want to play Borderlands 3, you're not really hurting yourself to wait. In fact, Borderlands is always a title that I've seen as the staple Steam sale game for FPS fans. Granted, with the Epic Store exclusivity, that wait might be quite a bit longer. If you're on the consoles, I would 100% encourage you watch the Digital Foundry performance breakdown video, because for me, if I was playing on either X1 X or PS4 Pro, I would seriously consider waiting until they get some more optimization patches out. Because for me, FPS drops, and again, just for me, FPS drops are something I just don't want to deal with on an ongoing regular basis in a title like this. It takes you out of the experience, in my opinion. But when it succeeds big time. And Borderlands 3 is another great staple in this awesome franchise. Play it with friends though. I played it solo, I played it with friends, and as usual in these types of games, if you have a crew to play with, it is magnificent. It is so much more fun watching your buddy throw some abilities and some weapons and chaos into the mix. And as I mentioned to you guys, I really wasn't looking forward to Borderlands 3 all that much, and I found myself playing way past when I normally would. It was tough to put the game down. It's really addictive. And with that, those are my thoughts on Borderlands 3. I do want to hear what you guys think about this whole thing. Are you playing the game? Are you enjoying it? Are you gonna wait? And if so, why? Let us know about it in the comments down below. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, you could always thumbs the video up, subscribe to the channel for more, and the FPS content just keeps coming. I promise we're gonna get back to normal stuff on the channel here really soon. We have the Modern Warfare beta, which I probably missed, but that and Shadowkeep, and then things settle down finally, and we can get back in a rhythm. So thank you very much for being patient with me. I really appreciate the support on the videos the last month, you guys. It's been insane, and this is that time of the year, man. It's Christmas. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you again next time.